My name is Rachel from Aeolian Heart Astrology, and this is my first YouTube video. So please bear with the awkwardness and the learning curve. I'm actually quite a camera shy person, and this is not the easiest thing for me to break into. But the reason why I'm offering this video is because I'm an astrologer that has been writing astrology articles on my own website for about 6.5 years. And over the course of my career as an astrologer, I have developed a unique style of bringing the zodiac to life, bringing the planetary transits to life by weaving them together with popular culture, with music, with philosophy, with art, so that the language of astrology is really made to come alive for everybody, and also to weave all times together. And my favorite manner of working with astrology right now is to enlighten people to the nature of the signs through really amazing, important historical figures, great artists, writers, poets from history that are meaningful to me. And so for this season of Pisces in 2022, I chose to write about Pisces season and evoke the soul of the sign through the great Renaissance artist Michelangelo of Florence. And I realized that to even begin to share his immense body of work through the images that we have, just the images of the Sistine Chapel alone, not to mention all of his sculpture, in order to really share that, I felt that a greater visual medium than a blog was needed. And so I had the idea to turn the article that I wrote for Pisces season into a little bit of a video. Just something to kind of get lost in, get immersed in, a different experience of the astrology that I do. And so that is what I'm offering to you today. I certainly hope that you enjoy my very first YouTube video, which is my presentation of Pisces season. Beginning on February 18th, 2022, the sun will slip into the vast oceans of Pisces, where time dissolves into eternity. Pisces represents the abyss, swirling and surreal. In the oceans of Pisces, the sun's light is absorbed, moving through expansive depths that are devoid of solid surfaces. In this dissolute place, the dream world emerges. After a long journey through the zodiac, the sun's transit through Pisces signals the end of its journey. The sun has grown weary of becoming and finally surrenders to the bliss of sleep. In Pisces, the sun dreams of all that has been or ever shall be. In Pisces season, you too may feel weary of becoming. The climate of emotional turmoil over the last 2 years has certainly been exhausting. The world remains caught up in a great storm where the raging abuse of power threatens from above, while whirlpools of despair suck you down from below. But major shifts in history never happen quietly, and for all the destruction that this storm has summoned, it has also stimulated tremendous growth. This storm has banished complacency, churning the waters of the collective imagination, dredging up wisdom from the primordial past, and stirring the soul of the world to rise. Even in this most dangerous hour, many can feel that a great renaissance is drawing near. In the weeks ahead, the sun no longer illuminates your individual story. Instead, you will merge with the whole human story, feeling the agony and the ecstasy of all ages. This Pisces season in 2022 will be extraordinary, full of great emotion and inspiration. And the sun's transit will be made prismatic by the presence of Jupiter and Neptune, blessing this time with divine grace and many moments of transcendent bliss. This season, you will dilate upon the agony and the ecstasy of life. You will see that the highs and the lows are but a singular process of creation, one in which every pressure put upon you is like the hand of a sculptor carving out a beautiful form. Every strike of the chisel and all the roughness of sanding is for the same end, to find the divinity within crude matter. You can expect a powerful strike of that chisel to arrive on February 22nd, which is the date of the United States' Pluto return. This means that Pluto will return to the exact degree that it was at way back when the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. This is a moment of truth. In 2022, Pluto's return represents a climax amidst this storm of global transformation, and it is manifesting in the ultimate power struggle for the fate of humanity. The U.S. Pluto return will heighten the clash between competing dreams for the future. On the one hand, the techno-totalitarians have made it very clear that their dream is for the world to be dominated by one power and for most people on Earth to be enslaved. The Plutonian shadow looms in their gross addiction to power and in how desperately they claw for more all the time through censorship, mandates, surveillance, and war. Meanwhile, the true heart of humanity dreams of expanded freedom and prosperity, a world where peace, love, and unity can flourish. No matter what troubles may emerge, the oceans of Pisces have a heart whose love is infinite, soothing the pain of the past into compassion, transforming grief into deeper wisdom. This is the support that is underneath the dream of humanity. Now, at this crisis point, the future cannot be left to the dim imagination of tyrants. Their vision is artificial, cruel, and myopic. Instead, the dream of the future, born from the heart of humanity and the soul of the world, is much more powerful, more resonant, and more true. In Pisces, to dream is not oblivion, but a return to the most primal form of consciousness. The language of dreams is imagination. And enfolded within the depths of imagination is the yearning for intimacy with the universe, a relationship with something greater than oneself. When you remember the power of dreaming. You see that the planets are thoughts whirling through the inner space of consciousness. And in this way, the whole world and its future can be ordered and ordained by divine imagination. In the ocean of consciousness, tiny ripples can become great waves. This means the fate of the world is as much in your power as anyone else's. Take this opportunity to dream of peace, of light, and prosperity. The soul of Pisces can best be appreciated through immersion into the life and art of the great Renaissance artist, Michelangelo, who was born with his sun, moon, and Mars in Pisces on March 6th, 1475. Michelangelo's relationship to sculpture, not to mention painting, architecture, and poetry, perfectly articulates the immensity of human will in such tension with pure imagination that an explosion of magnificence poured forth as a never-ending fountain of creation. As Irving Stone wrote in his great novel, The Agony and the Ecstasy, about Michelangelo, all of his fluid strength, love, passion, desire had been poured into the nascent form, giving of its inner heat and substance and fluid form, until at last the sculptor and the marble had totally coalesced, so deeply penetrating and infusing each other that they had become one, marble and man, and organic unity, each fulfilling the other in the greatest act of art and love known to the human species. Now it is the dream world of Pisces, where individual consciousness becomes merged with the infinite, overflowing with inspiration. And you can see that in all of Michelangelo's work. His tremendous gift reveals how immersed he was in the sea of images. You can imagine how he must have slipped easily into half-lit dream worlds, yielding to the flow of the currents, trusting that he would be carried to wherever he needed to go. And when we behold the beauty of Renaissance art, it is so pleasant to imagine that all of this was created during the High Renaissance for purely spiritual reasons. But in fact, the art was funded by wealthy patrons. Thus, all of this art was tainted with political motives and intrigue. Even in the best of times, there are the worst kind of people in power. Michelangelo was notoriously rebellious, often encoding messages in his art that insulted the political tyrants and even the Pope, whom he had a personal dislike for. So numerous were Michelangelo's contributions to Florence that it is difficult to say which of his works is the most beautiful or iconic. But his statue of David may be his greatest work, fully embodying his genius and the tension with the politics of his time. David was as much a political statement as it was an artistic achievement, and its message is just as resonant today as the Psalms attributed to the biblical legend of David. Constructed at a time when Florence was still recovering from the tyranny of the Medici banking dynasty, David stood erect in front of Florence's town hall
as an apotropaic talisman to ward off political oppressors as well as foreign invaders. Michelangelo was not the only Florentine who had David on his mind at the time. In one of the most remarkable cases of historical synchronicity, Niccolo Machiavelli was invoking the biblical legend of David in his masterwork of political philosophy, The Prince. Now, in the Bible story, David rejected the weapons that were offered to him by the king Saul, instead opting for his own sling and knife to defeat the giant Goliath. Now, Machiavelli interpreted this legend as a political metaphor for the city-state and how to defend it. In conclusion, he said, the arms of others either fall from your back or weigh you down or they bind you fast. There were already many long-standing traditions in Italy that depicted David as the patria, or father and protector of the Italian cultural heritage. While Michelangelo's statue was his contribution to the patria tradition, he did deviate from traditional depictions of David by chiseling this biblical legend moments before he slew Goliath, rather than the tradition of revealing David standing victorious after the giant's death. It was a strange artistic decision. Without Goliath present in the work to demonstrate the giant's behemoth size, there was no frame of reference with which to perceive David's truly heroic feat. Art historian Saul Levine suggests this omission was deliberate, as absent at the time was the true Goliath of Florence, the Medici family. A decade prior, the banking dynasty, who had ruled over Florence for generations, were expelled during an uprising led by the Dominican friar Girolamo Savonarola. You may know his name from the legend of the bonfire of the vanities. Now, determined to reclaim their seat of power, the Medici family fled to Rome. It is said that David's eyes were watching Rome due to its strategic location outside Florence's town hall. The statue was originally commissioned to be part of a series of biblical prophets to adorn the roofline of the Florence Cathedral. However, when builders proved incapable of mounting the 12-ton, 17-foot statue, a new location for David had to be determined. A special committee, which included Leonardo da Vinci and Sandro Botticelli, met on January 25, 1504, to determine the ultimate location of David. The Florentine Republicans wanted David placed in front of the town hall as a symbol of their government and a protector against foreign threats. Medici sympathizers, however, felt it would be safer to place him off to the side in a nearby sculpture gallery, ostensibly out of concern that Michelangelo's masterpiece might deteriorate if not protected from the elements. But it's most likely out of fear that it would offend their masters. Now, it was ultimately decided that David would be placed in front of Florence's town hall, the Palazzo Vecchio. Michelangelo's work displaced an earlier work by Donatello, which depicted Judith and Holofernes, a deadly sign that symbolized Medici rule. Now, the family had commissioned the earlier Donatello work and according to the historical record, placed it in its position under an evil constellation, suggesting that the banking family had employed their knowledge of astrology when electing a time to erect the statue that would symbolize their dominion over Florence. Therefore, the statue of David represented a shift in power. It represented a guardian spirit returning to the city of Florence to protect it against this political tyranny. Now, it is amazing to think of David as a protective talisman against exiled banking elites more than 500 years after it was erected in front of the Palazzo Vecchio. Now, in 2022, the Medici family is long gone, but what the Medici family was to Florence, Italy, has evolved into multinational investment firms like BlackRock and Vanguard. The tyranny that they provoke remains unchanged, however. There's nothing really that new under the sun. While the Medici dynasty returned to power in Florence less than a decade after David was erected, the vitality of art to transform the world must not be forgotten. It may not be accomplished in a single generation, but we can follow Michelangelo's example and slowly chisel away at the raw chaos of existence to create a world worth living in year after year, century after century, epoch after epoch. Now, I would like to give you a little forecast for the season ahead. Pisces season begins, as I said, on February 18th. This begins the transit of the sun through the dream world of the zodiac. And this pulls you back into that primal power of imagination within. This is a very important season in 2022, one that will reach the highest highs and the lowest lows. So get ready for an interesting ride. On February 22nd, we have the United States' Pluto return. The U.S. Pluto return is exact on this day. However, this is merely the climax of a process that began all the way back in 2008. 2008 was when a long shadow fell across the national psyche. That was when, the dawn of the Obama era, when the U.S. economy hemorrhaged in the housing crisis, and a cloud of cognitive dissonance lulled all the anti-war sentiment of the public into apathy and ignorance. Do you remember that? Now that the Pluto return is culminating in 2022, the United States will begin the final stages of this great test. The paradoxes between this country's high ideals of democracy and the brutal ideology of global imperialism can no longer be ignored. Just like the astrologer Michael Luton describes, quote, "We're rich and generous and protective and dangerously hostile at the same time. How could we bomb an enemy one day and send coffee and sandwiches the next?" So the Pluto return is the era of confronting that collective dissonance, watching many institutions of power crumble. The tremendous loss of trust in politics, mainstream media, education, and medical science are just some examples of what Pluto has been turning into dust. Whatever credibility and authority remains intact after this difficult transit is over in 2025 will have truly stood the test of time. So think of this as the test of integrity that any civilization or culture that's meant to survive must undergo. The US Pluto return is the time to be the change that you want to see in the world. And since this falls in such a blessed Pisces season, it is time to dream the change that you want to see in the world. The next significant date is the new moon in Pisces, which is on March 2nd. The month of March really gets off to a refreshing start with this super dreamy new moon in Pisces. Think of this as a seed moment of great potential for blessings and expansion, because this new moon is conjoined to Jupiter in Pisces. This expands and nourishes your intentions. This waters the seeds of your desires. Everything that you wish for and dream of and set into motion at this new moon will be greatly blessed and expanded. Also on this day, Mercury will be conjoined to Saturn in Aquarius. You may feel rather serious, but there is so much mental focus available at this moment. A masterful level of meditative power. A masterful capacity for study. And a focused and intensive form of conversation will be highly favored. Now, in addition, this new moon is also going to be happening on the day that Venus, Mars, and Pluto are conjoined in Capricorn. This intense influence from Capricorn will summon enough primal power to accomplish any goal or break through any obstacle in your path. You may experience an emergence of the shadow, something adversarial that will challenge you to navigate the laws of power. In the wide world, it may be a day that stirs some conflict and tension, but nevertheless, this is a powerful moment, one to take action, to break through whatever is holding you back from living as you wish to live. You may write a manifesto and use any other form of magic to etch your intentions deeply into the heart of the universe. The next significant day is March 5th, when the sun will conjoin Jupiter in Pisces. This is such a beautiful day and another seed moment when Jupiter is in the heart of the sun. Pisces is a strong placement of Jupiter, the planet of blessings and expansion. Thus, you will be able to tune into divine providence and expand your faith in the benevolence of creation. When you really think about it, all that any of us actually need to do anything, to be anything, to accomplish anything, is faith. This is a day to expect spiritual revelation and divine communion, meaning that you feel nature speaking to you. You feel the sky speaking to you. You feel the presence of the creative principle in the universe as alive, loving, and embracing. Artistic inspiration will naturally flourish under these conditions, and this is also a day where you will come into harmony with divine will by surrendering to greater love, to a greater beauty, and of course, to a greater mind than your own. On March 10th, Mercury will enter Pisces, adding to the watery energy, adding to the dreamy ambiance of this season. When Mercury finds the watery abyss of Pisces, it is a very strange and difficult place for him to navigate. Now, Mercury is the planet that represents human intelligence. Mercury's role is as a problem solver and a navigator. All of these roles are deeply humbled in the abyss of Pisces, where there are no solid surfaces for the sun to reflect on. There are no points of perspective to orient oneself. Rather, the only way through the waters of Pisces is to allow the mind to wander and get a little lost. So Mercury's transit through Pisces is like that, drifting, dreaming, and getting a little far out, a little lost at sea. Now, this opens the collective mind to surreality, to that transparency between dreams and waking life. Far out in the oceans of Pisces, Mercury discovers the primal consciousness that precedes language. And so for the 3 weeks that Mercury is in Pisces, image, feeling, and intuition become more emphasized. When you yield to the currents and you let your feelings be first, then Mercury's transit through Pisces will allow the words that you share to be exquisitely beautiful, coming forth like loosely strung pearls from the deepest layers of consciousness. This is a creative and very dreamy transit for Mercury. The next significant moment is the full moon in Virgo on March 18th. The full moon occurs at the end of the season when the sun in Pisces and the moon are directly opposed to one another. This opposition between the sun in the ethereal waters of Pisces and the moon in the analytical earth sign of Virgo represents a concrescence of water and earth, which is an experience realized in the poetic truth that we are spirits in a material world. Now, the law of correspondences between spiritual and material things will be revealed with such simple clarity at this full moon. The relationship that your body has to your thoughts and feelings will be made very clear. With the Sun, Mercury, Jupiter, and Neptune in Pisces, powerful intuitions and insights will inspire the very health-conscious moon in Virgo to dissolve negative emotions and clear your mind for the coming of spring. And finally, on March 20th, the sun will move into the sign of Aries, and we will welcome the equinox, the quickening of life on the earth once again. This begins the astrological new year, for the zodiac begins with the sign of Aries. So we say goodbye to the waters of Pisces and become reborn into a new cycle. The start of this new season begins with a fresh, optimistic outlook and a deep sense of faith. And so we will all feel like anything's possible by the time the equinox arrives.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this Pisces season forecast, you can read the full article by clicking the link in the description box below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys again in Aries season.